Hello and welcome once again to Simple Groundwork and Diorama Techniques with me, your host and instructor, Bill Grigg. What we're going to do in this segment is we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to do a general wash on something other than the way I did the filtering. But what I want to talk about now is what the manufacturer gives you for piece quality. Now this is my theory on this. If the manufacturer gives you an inferior piece to start with, I don't care how good of a painter you are going to have a really well painted inferior piece because of what the manufacturer provided you with. And this poor manufacturer, I'm going to bag on him, but I'm going to bag on him because he deserves to be bagged on. Now, what I want you to do, Dave, is get in, you know what, let's see if I can get something dark here. We'll put it against the wing, the back of the wing. I really want you to see this guy. Get in tight on this guy right up here and tell me when you've got it. Okay, here's the deal, folks. The manufacturer has provided you with this piece, but he's incorporated the head into the total figure. Now, because of old mold making techniques, they weren't able to get like his wrap around his, come up to me, Dave, a little bit. They come up, if there was a wrap around his head, let's say, and we'll use this for an example. In the old days, the mold making process, press this tight in against your head. If there was a little gap, that gap would be a solid piece of plastic. It was just only a, what's the word I'm looking for? An intended gap. It's not an actual gap. So the quality of that piece, and come back down to the guy again, Dave, and tell me when you got him. Yep. You can see the quality of that piece is a bit inferior. It would be an all right painted piece, but it wouldn't be an exceptionally painted piece. Now, think about this. Think about this. If I've got a piece that's really, really well done, let's say a piece of armor, and I take and I put this inferior figure into this piece of armor, it decays the quality of the piece because the overall presentation is not good. You've put an inferior molded piece, and that's what I'm talking about. If the manufacturer starts out and gives you a really exceptional piece, then it is only up to you to take that piece and enhance it. It's not that I'm this marvelous model maker, it's just that I happen to choose good quality models to build, and I have the ability to paint them well. And that's all this is. That's all model making is, folks. Start with a really, really good piece and enhance it. We'll get a close-up on the pilot, Dave. Now, this is a Spanish manufacturer, and the two boys that own this particular company have been sculpting since they were 14 years old. They're now in around their 60s or so. They're probably even older than that now. But what they did here is the sculpt on the piece is immaculate. It's an immaculate piece. Let me go to the back and get a close-up of his parachute. Just insanely good quality. So therefore, where your base piece is sculpted so well, and you put a good paint job on top of it, now you have an outstanding piece, a museum quality piece. But to start out, and we'll come back down with these guys, Dave. And we'll go up to this blob of mess. Oh my God, look at this. This is really bad. This guy here is really tough, really rough. See the difference in the sculpts, folks? We've got, let me turn this sideways. We've got basically a blob next to him. And can you get in the two of them? See what I'm saying? Does that make sense? That makes sense to everyone, yes? Everybody's in home going, yes, that makes sense. It does make sense. It is true. Now, because of new technology, we now have a process in the modeling industry called slide molding. Now, what I understand is just like a regular mold, the two pieces come together as they always did, but now they insert something inside of it. Now, what this does, this allows you to do things like this guy here. And do the same thing. I'll back him up with that so you get a good Got it? Now, you can see what they've done. I'm going to come down a little bit, Dave, and I'll get right up against my red shirt here. What they have done is they've hollowed out his sleeves. They've hollowed out his bottom of his pants legs, and they've also hollowed around where his head will go in. Now, unlike the guy with a solid face in there, this allows you now to do a beautiful job painting on the face without surrounding areas being touched, like the wrap around his head. The wrap around his head is now done in a separate piece. So what you want to do when you do this, and this is true for all modeling, railroad people, car people, everybody, you want to take these pieces and you want to paint them and then assemble a painted piece. So in other words, I have intentionally left this man's head off. I've intentionally left off his hands because I want to paint them, paint the piece, and not have the possibility of, here's my sleeve, and now I'm going with my flesh and I'm touching it onto the sleeve, and then I got to touch the sleeve up, and oh geez, then I get a bit of paint in the hand, and I got to put the hand up. It could become a vicious circle here. So that's the idea, gang. You want to start with really, really good quality. Another good example of that is if you go into some of the resin figures. Now, resin figures are expensive. Expensive. This particular one we're looking at right here is $36. This is a 120 millimeter piece by a company that no longer exists. But look at what they're giving you. Look at what they are giving you. Wish I had this guy on a pin. Let's do his face. Now look at the sculpt on that. Tell me when, Dave.
You got it.
Got it? Got that sculpt? Look at that face. It's exquisite. Although this is 120 millimeter, 1/16th scale. What I was showing was 35th scale. Again, we'll get the back of his pants. Look at the quality of the sculpt. It's exquisitely done. So to take this piece and paint this piece is a charm, because the manufacturer has provided you with such a high quality piece. It's very easy to enhance. Let's take out his upper body. This is amazing. Now, one thing they did here, which I am not happy about, is they put his bag on his body. The bag, in my opinion, should be a separate piece. But again, it's a beautiful sculpt. We'll get the front of his jacket. Now, this is resin. This is not plastic. This is treated a little bit differently. Okay? Now, the other thing I want to talk about is treating each piece of a figure or a model, like let's say we do a car interior. We're not doing the interior of the car. We are modeling a steering wheel. Once you get the steering wheel done, then you are modeling a dashboard. You are modeling the seat. It's all individual. Do not think of it as one giant piece. And I will show you that right here. Now, I already did this in another segment, but this will reinforce this. These are not painted completely yet. But you see what I've done is I've taken the figure's equipment, I've made a holder for the equipment, and now I will treat each piece of this as a separate model. Not something that needs to be put on afterwards, which it is, but if you treat this as secondary, not important, then that's what you've got. You've got a secondary piece that's not important, it's not painted all that well. Treat each individual piece here as a model. I am modeling an ammo bag. That's what I'm doing. I'm modeling a German World War II ammo bag, and think of it in terms like that. It's the same with all the equipment. These are canteens, and that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm modeling a German World War II canteen. I had a friend that sat in one of these pieces one night and worked on it for 2 hours on a canteen in 35th scale. But when he got done we wanted to kill him and bring him out in the cornfield and dig a shallow grave because his piece was exquisite. He even went in to where the cap unscrewed, and you see this on real pieces if you happen to see an artifact, little minute tiny scratches where they had constantly taken this off. All these canteens, they have chains on them so you don't lose your cover, and the chain rubs against and it rubs off the paint. He did it. He did it. It was... I've been in a rubber room, but that really, it was absolutely stunning. So then when he assembled all these beautifully painted pieces, he ends up with something like my guy here. We'll back him up so you can see him a little bit better. But it's all due to the fact of the manufacturer providing you with excellent, excellent quality. You notice that Frank that I was doing in the last segment. Exquisite model, exquisite. The molding on that is so fine that all you need to do now is take it and enhance it through the tricks that I am teaching you in these instructional videos. Okay, now let's shift gears a little bit. After I've talked to you about the quality of a piece, let's shift gears a little bit and get back into this, because I had, when we were first doing this series, I had received really a tremendous amount of emails on this technique. People just, I don't know why, they just have a hard time getting this. But what I have done here is, this is for a real large scale figure, this particular base here. What I need to do now is, because I've sculpted this with a two-part epoxy, like a resin epoxy, I guess is a good way to put that. This needs to be colored in to reflect the base. Now, I'm not worried about keeping everything the same color. That is not necessary. So what I'm going to do is, now, you notice I'm taking this paint and I am shaking this paint. If you did this with an enamel, I'd come to your house and kick your butt. But I'd be going to a lot of houses, wouldn't I? My gas bill would be way up. Shake that and shake this. Now, why am I saying stir your paint and I'm shaking these? Because this paint really doesn't matter. It's kind of an inferior paint, and if you don't get the right chemical mixture in this, it really doesn't make that much difference. But before we do that, let's go into the regular bottles of paint, and let's do 2. Now, this is an enamel. There is a carrier film that floats above your pigment, just like we do if we were to take this. You see, there's all the pigment, and up here is your carrier film. Now, you need to have this separation obviously become one, but it needs to have the complete pigment to go up into the carrier film. Now, what would happen if I just took this and shook this? What might happen is I might leave a little pocket right in the corner there of pigment. I have not put the right chemical mixture into my carrier film. It's changing the composition of the paint. That is why I say to you, stir your paint, stir your paint, stir your paint. It's the same with enamels. There's a carrier and there's pigment, and unless you get in and get this all stirred correctly to get the right chemical mixture, you're depleting your paint. It won't dry as well. It may get to a point where it starts to drag and pull and streak. So that's the deal on that, especially when you get into, where'd it go? Especially when you get into these little square bottles. Round is better in a bottle. Square bottles, again, they have a tendency to trap a little pigment in the corner, and again, you're not getting the right chemical mixture, and if you're not getting the right chemical mixture, your paint is going to fight you. Okay? So keep that in mind. Stir your paint.
Just a quick question, Bill. Is there a shelf life on like those enamels?
Well, yeah, there is a shelf life on those enamels, but I find if you do the correct mixture and never, ever, ever put an outside contaminant into your paint. So in other words, if I was to stir this paint, I would take this paint, stir it, put it onto a palette, and use this. My brush, even though my brush is dead bone dry, it still carries a residue from its thinner. and I truly, truly believe this, we had a real problem at one point in time with this paint. I wish I could say the manufacturer name, but we had a real problem with this paint. What was happening was we were buying new bottles of paint, and because everybody was using an outside thinner and not staying within the manufacturer because of due to cost, it was turning to jello. So you'd get a guy that'd buy a bottle of paint, and 3 days later, it's turning to jello. And I'm truly convinced it's because of outside contaminants. It's not jiving with the thinner. It's just they're not getting along well. Also, how many times have you seen guys, and you know you do this, I'm pointing at you, you know you do this, you take the paint out, you put it in the cap, you paint out of the cap. How many times have you seen people do that? Everybody has a common practice. Well, you've now created a mess inside your lid, you're not getting a proper seal on your bottle, and your paint's going out the window. Now, why are we so concerned about saving paint? What's the big deal? Paint, gang, is getting expensive. It has jumped in the past, I want to say 4 months, it's jumped 30 cents already. So keep the longevity of your paint, do a little simple, and it's easy. You take an old rag and you take the bottle and you just turn it. No big deal. You getting that, Dave? Spinning that bottle?
Okay, hang on a second.
Yep, come on down. Take my rag.
Go.
Got it? Put on the bottle, and honestly, just spin the bottle. If you want to get really crazy, which I don't do, I probably should, like I say, do as I say, not as I do. I would actually go in probably and clean the inside of this bottle too. Now I've got a good proper seal on my paint, and I've got a $3.60 bottle of paint that will last me the whole $3.60 worth of stuff. It's not that, also everything we do in the show, we do it on the cheapy cheap, and we want you to get the best out of your product that you can possibly get. And that's just simple paint bottle maintenance and stirring your paint so you get the proper chemical mixture. But with this acrylic paint, not too worried about it. And again, I'll give it a good shake. Also, the way they design these bottles is a little difficult to get in and stir. Now again, come down with me, Dave, and onto a non-absorbent surface. And you guys all know I love bumper sticker paper, or just regular labeling paper. Wax paper works fine as well. If you're using wax paper, it might be good to your advantage to put it on something like, in other words, I take this piece of paper because it's a little transparent, and put your wax paper on top of that. Now the reason for that is, if you had it like, if I did it on wax paper and I had it underneath a newspaper, I'd get the newsprint coming through, and I'm not seeing my true reflectance of color. That's why I used to do everything at one point in time on a mirror, because of the reflectance I would get through the mirror of the paint that would give me my true color. But I don't do this as much anymore as I do it on the paper now. And again, come on down, Dave. Now you see, I've just put out simple black and white. Now, why isn't he using a gray? Well, first of all, I don't have any gray. I ran out of gray. So I'm going to make my own, but I'm doing this to stress this point. A little black, a little white, making a gray. You do not have to get all wiggy and think about, I've got to replicate the exact tone. No, you don't. Come over to the piece, Dave. And we'll go right in here. Now, why don't I have to replicate the exact same tone? Because I'm going to go into it later on and beat it up a little bit more with my washes, my dry brushing, and my filtering. And you can see it kind of semi-matches, but I'm not real concerned about it. And if I am real concerned about it, I'd go back in here with some white and try to get the same tone. And you can see, folks, it's difficult. Adding a little black to change that tone again. But I'm never going to get in the same ballpark unless, of course, I wrote the mixture solution down. And who does that? Some guy out there going, I do. Well, I'm coming to your house next. Hey man, we're watching a guy paint dry. I'm watching paint dry. Riveting TV again, gang. Riveting TV. Sitting on the edge of your seat right now.
This is wicked exciting.
Isn't this exciting? I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I'm not sure my heart can take this.
I know it. My heart be still. I've got students here, folks. That's why we're doing this. That's why you hear this banter going on. And of course, I like to talk to my cameraman Dave all the time.
Yeah, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Come with me, Dave.
Dave's not here.
Let me show you the evils of your ways, David. Okay, that's all well and good. Now,
Actually, sitting from back here, I almost can't tell the difference.
No.
Between what you just painted and what was painted
Yeah,
before.
and once I get this and I put this wash on, you'll see that this area of different colors, they'll tie together. Matter of fact, I'm going to do it a little bit right here. I notice what the deal is. I actually probably put some green into this to replicate a little moss and stuff on the rock. And I don't actually happen to have the green, so we'll just stay with this, because it will be further enhanced. And you notice, come on over here, Dave, one more time. And just watch what I do with the paint. I just grabbed a little bit of white, and I'm not going into my black anymore. I'm just staying in this gray. And I'm just going to mess with the gray. Now, when you mix paints, it's always good to keep separations in your paint. So in other words, it wouldn't benefit me to take the base gray color that I first put on and not be able to see that as I paint. It's better if I got a reference point and then mix in individual spots around that reference point so I can see exactly what I'm doing for my tonal differences. And this really isn't toning, this is actually changing color. But you can see how I did that now. I'm going back over here, Dave. Now, you can see that this gray is a lot lighter than that gray. Well, how would we tie that together? Well, we could do a little simple, and I'll bring it over, Dave. You don't have to follow me in this. I could do a little simple. Come on down to the paper. Got it? And notice that I just dry brush it out a little bit. Now to tie this, come on with me. And to tie this together, I will now take, you notice I'm just pulling the brush. You see what I'm not hardly anything there. I'm watching a guy paint. Let's go up and paint a room. Let's go paint the walls of a room next. But you can see how this is tying the difference in color kind of together with the rest of the base. And like I say, once I get on top of this with the wash, which is what I'm going to do next, you will actually see how the wash contributes to tying everything into one visual hue. If you do not have one visual hue in things, you do not have scale effect in your piece. And I've said this, I said it in other segments. If you look at these railroad guys, and I always bag on the railroad guys, but I'm sorry, railroad guys, sometimes you guys mystify me. You do. You just mystify me. You got a painted building, beautifully painted building. You've got a beautifully painted train car. Your engine is enhanced. Everything's done. And then you go in and you do your groundwork. And you do your groundwork with our accepted product. We all know who it is. And you do it in one color. The layout looks fine, but that's what it does. It looks fine. It's not that layout that you go in and go, oh man, look at this layout. You go in and go, hey, nice layout. Yeah, nice, it's nice. It's because of the tone differences. You'd even be better off taking the whole piece, and if you did the one color things, you'd be better off taking and dull coating your cars and dull coating your buildings and dull coating your groundwork. At least that gives you that flat hue that you can look at. But they just don't seem to do that. They just like that. I paint all the groundwork. I paint everything now. Painting everything. So, that's pretty good. And because it's an acrylic, basically dry, I should probably go in and not be lazy. And even though the feet are going to be here where the big figure's going, it's a good general rule to paint everything in case you get a little gap or something that you could see in. And again, I picked up a little bit lighter, and you can see I'm still going in and dry brushing all over the place, especially where it joins the other color. Oh, that was good. That worked out. That worked out perfect right there, Dave. Come right over on this side here, right in that area, right where I'm pointing my brush. Now you can see there's a little bit of green and a little gray, but as I take and do this highlight color, see it blend that green and gray together? So therefore I've taken that hard line and I've broken that hard line by coming on top of it with a third color. Remember, 1, 3, 5, 7, stay in your odds. Do not stay in your even, stay in your odds. The brain sees the even visually. It confuses the eye in odd numbers. And that's what you want to do. You don't want to, I don't want to say like confuse the eye, but it lets the eye look at the color and not have it stark this or that. It's this, that, or whatever. Okay, and that's not too bad. Of course, to do this really properly, it just is more time consuming than we have time here on the show to do. So I can tie this together just a little bit more. And now, I've based the entire piece with acrylics. Now this is the same as we did the rocks. This is a styrofoam base, that construction pink styrofoam that you see on new buildings all the time, covered with facial tissue. And regular old, blow your nose facial tissue. You take it, you put it on, you wet it, you poke it in place, it conforms. You need to see episode 1 and 2. Yeah, episode 1 and 2 of this series. And that will get you building your rocks, so you can go back and take a look at those if the cable guys do that, have a chance. Now, why did I paint this in acrylics and not enamels? Because I need the acrylic base to barrier against the solvent-based paints that I'm going to put on top of this. If I was to use a solvent-based paint and then come on top of it with a solvent-washed piece, I could re-stimulate my base, I could change my tonal differences and my color differences, and I could also burn through, and you might see just a big piece of white Kleenex sticking out because I've burned through my barrier. That's again the same reason I use the low odor thinner. The low odor thinner is not aggressive on an enamel paint, and I don't have to worry about it burning through my base to my bare plastic. And now you do that, you burn through, you got a problem. That's something that, even though I said, you take these things and you take it and you go, well, I'm going to turn this negative into a positive. You burn through your barrier, you burn through your bare plastic. You have a problem. There's a real problem. You now have to determine, am I going to take the paint off? You can't retouch it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it would come right down to, do I need to strip this down and redo it, or do I need to now replicate battle damage in that spot? Or it would be a disaster in a car. It would be just a disastrous work for an automobile guy. So let's take a little quickie break so I can clean this brush, and then I'll come back and we're going to do a general wash on this piece right here. All right, now why does he have all these brushes? Well, there's certain applications that I want to do with certain brushes, and to explain everything to you would just be an hour, and God, you'd be beating yourself in the head with a hammer after I got done with that. It would just take too long to explain everything with brushes. But what I want here for my general painting is I want something that's kind of soft, You can see what I'm doing. I'm feeling all the brushes heads. Ooh. Ooh. I'm getting excited, guys. Thank God I got a desk in front of me. So. Let me see.
That's it, okay.
We're going right in the toilet here. You can see what I've chosen. It's a wide, flat brush, and it's got a little resistance to it. It's not flippy floppy like, let's get this guy. See him? See that? That's hard to manipulate.
Let me get in close for you here. All right. That's good.
Let me play with the brush.
Yeah.
See what I'm doing? Look at the other head. See it? It's more resilient. That gives me more control when I come onto my piece. Okay, now let's come down. Follow me down. And again, using an oil, an artist oil, we're going to put a little bit into a container. Now, notice where I placed the paint in the container. This is something that I did in other shows that I really wasn't happy with. Can you get inside the container?
Turn the container a little bit more toward me. That's good.
Right there?
Right there. Okay.
Now notice where I put the paint. I put the paint up at the top here. I want to separate it from when I put my thinner in there so I can control my mixture. Instead of just dumping it in the middle, pouring something and what I got is what I got, that's not what I'm looking for. Wouldn't you know it's sliding? Wouldn't you know it's sliding around in there now? It's only because it's live TV. No, we're not live. Okay, again, I'm going to cheat. I would usually transfer the paint, but I'm not going to do that. I've done this a few times, like 2 or 3 times before this. And you can see inside the, I can get that now. See inside the container, and I'll add my thinner. And now I've got a separation between that and my thinner. Actually, I could mix up a big thing of this because I got to do a large area. But now I'm going to take it, I'm going to pull this down and go in. And you can see I definitely don't have enough. But what I'm looking for, and I noticed I was doing this is probably a better way to do this. What I'm looking for is I drop the side. I'm looking for a transparency in this paint.
Point the cup a little more toward me. Okay, good. Right there.
Can you see the edge as I pull?
Yeah.
See that come down the side there? That's what we're looking for. Looking for a consistency like that. Now as I put this down also, real professional, stick the paintbrush in my mouth. I will use this bottle cap. Notice I set it on an angle. I do not want this to get together. Pick a little bit up and follow me right over to the top of the piece now, Dave. I'll turn this. And we go on, maybe I can tilt this so you can see it a little bit better. And we start to drop this in. Now that's a little dark. But one thing about an oil, as it dries, it will lighten up a little bit. So I'm not too worried about this darkness. Plus, I've got this that I put in after I painted. See, I should have waited until this was sculpted, then painted the whole piece at once, but I didn't. So now I deal with it. This darkness will tie these together. And also, because I'm on top of an acrylic, I don't have to worry about working one spot 3 or 4 times. If I was on an enamel, no way do I want to work this 3 or 4 times because I could regenerate the enamel underneath it because it's a solvent based with a solvent based. It's not going to work that bad with acrylics, with an oil paint, but if you were to put an enamel on top of an enamel, you could definitely regenerate this by touching it 3 or 4 times. I've done it a million times. I don't do it anymore because we learn by our mistakes. That's another thing, gang. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. No big deal. You make a mistake, you learn by your mistake. You ruined a $300 model, but don't be afraid to make a mistake. If you're really unsure of what to do, take an old junk piece and just work on an old junk piece. I do it all the time. We did a lot of stuff on business cards at one point in time just to try techniques. If it worked, it worked. Well, that's good. Then we'd put it on a piece. If it didn't, who cares? It's on a business card. That's what we were using. We were using business cards as bases. And this is a little thick. Now, do I need to thin my mixture? No. I can go in, pick a little of the pure out of there, and come over, and even go on top of what I've already done, because I have an acrylic barrier. One thing you want to avoid now is running down and getting onto your base piece. That could be bad, because we are using this as a staining agent and a darkening agent, so we want to avoid that. Again, Martha, he's painting. Well, next out, you want to go out and fill some grass growing? Let's see if we can do that. Now let's get in because this is the initial. Let's get into where the colors are really different. And I need a little more thinner. And you notice I still keep it separated. That needs a little more color. And let's get in over here and start this. Now you can immediately, did you get that edge?
Got it.
You can immediately see that that has tied that in with the surrounding different color. It's not a different color anymore. Now what I am going to have a problem with here is because this is textured and this is not, I'm going to have a problem between these two lines. But that is not going to be a problem because this is going to get a little bit of snow on top of it. So when I put the snow down, I'm going to make sure that this hard-edged line disappears under a little tiny bit of snowfall. Wouldn't you like to see me do the snow? But that's way far away on this piece right now. You don't have to be too careful when you do this. But you notice, because it's a liquid, it's seeking the lowest point, and it's creating a shadow within the piece, which gives me a lot of dimension in the piece, gives me depth in the piece. So I've had a lot of people come to me and say to me, oh, it looks great right now as it is. Well, yeah, you know. But it can look way, way, way better. And you can see the difference. You can truly see the difference between this, which is just based, and I did, when I was painting this, I did, as my paintbrush ran out of paint, I did kind of highlight with that lighter color on top of these just to get an initial shading. You also notice I'm not really stroking the brushes, I'm more dabbing the brush. Now that's from the old days of when I did enamels on top of enamels and got burned through. I noticed if I stroked, I would get burned through a lot quicker than if I dabbed. And it's just a technique I've stayed with. It's probably not a bad idea. It's probably not a bad suggestion to dab this in. Also, try not to mix up too much of your wash ahead of time. Again, like I say, we do everything in this show inexpensively, and if you were to mix this up and had a lot of it is going to go down the drain. You won't use it. And why waste anything? Especially with the way things are tight today. Let me turn this a little bit. Martha, I'm going to kill that boy. I'm going to get that boy. He's painting again. But you can see how much more dimension I've getting here. And also, after I wash, I will go back in with an enamel paint, not an acrylic, not an oil, an enamel, and I will start using these small tins of paint because of the superior quality of this paint. This particular brand of paint, and this, come down here, this particular brand of thinner, they love each other. They get along, they just really like each other. Now, what's happening here is after this is dried, I go onto it with the small bottle of paint, but because this likes this thinner when it dries leaves a residue. And when you touch this paint to the dried residue of the low odor thinner, they work in conjunction together, and they start to, when you start to dry brush, it's almost like dry brushing with a piece of silk. It becomes so easy to control. And that's what you want. You don't want your dry brush fighting you. And for those of you people that have dry brushed, think about this. So after a little bit, and your paint is out and you're dry brushing, you ever notice how it starts to pull a little bit? It starts to streak and pull and maybe clump a little bit? You've all noticed that. So this is why I like to use that paint and that thinner, because it won't dry and start to drag and clump and streak. And anybody that's a serious builder has definitely experienced that. But you can see how much better the piece is growing. Piece is growing, piece is growing, piece is growing. It's just constantly growing. And how are we on time, Dave?
44 minutes.
Okay.
Another 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll just keep going and... Martha, get the car out. Let's go to that studio and kill that boy. I can't believe I'm watching a man paint. Yeah, you are. And you notice again, like I said, see it running? Running all over the place. Oh boy, would I have a comment here, but we won't say that.
This is a family show.
Yeah, I was going to say running like an illegal alien from the INS, but I'm not going to say that. And you can see how immediately that is enhanced everything. The greens are popping through to get that kind of mossy color on the rock. The base has been tied together. You notice that was a definitely two colors. Getting tight right in there, Dave. It's no longer two colors. It's not two separate colors. It is, but because of the black wash, it's tied it together. And here's another thing, gang. How can I say this? Because I just did it. You shouldn't be doing a black wash. But in this piece it works because I want it darker. And plus I'm going to come up a little bit more, and then the black will just serve as a very subtle shadow into this. It won't be the main shadow. It will just be subtle. But you should really stay away from black washes on things. Same with white. You know, never paint black for black, because how do you enhance black? And never paint white for white, because how do you lighten white and enhance it? So it would be better off for me if I was doing, let's say, a night aircraft or something all in black. It would be better for me to start out with a really dark gray and then wash it in black. The washing it in black now gives you the appearance that it is a black aircraft. Same with white. Back in the old days when we did a lot of Vietnam subjects, they flew in that light gull gray with a white bottom on the F-4 Phantoms. It was just tough. But you'd be better off in that Phantom bottom to start out with, let's say, a camouflage gray, or a white of, how do you say this? A white of lesser white. So in other words, a white that's a little bit grayer in its appearance, or a little bit shaded down, Then when you dry brush your white, let's say on like a winter camouflage, as you saw on those German snipers, that gives the appearance that it is a white uniform. But you've started out with a base coat of gray, light gray. You can't highlight white and you can't shadow black. How do you do it? What do you use? Black? What do you use? White? What do you use? Just doesn't work that way. And I would continue again along this entire piece, and this is just getting to be beyond TV. Clean your brush. I know people that actually do this with 3 or 4 bottles. They have one bottle that's truly only for their wash, their cutting. They have one bottle that they only clean their brushes in. They even go to the point of they have one bottle that they clean the initial paint off the brush, the heavy volume of paint off their brush in. They'll take it, wipe it out, and they'll actually go to a second bottle, and that second bottle is for the lesser contaminated brush to clean in. And then the third bottle is strictly for washing. That's what they do. I've seen it done. It's not a bad idea. That is not a bad idea. That's really not something that I would say, what are you doing? That's actually a really good idea. It just comes down to cost again. Do you want to spend that much money on all your different product? So, once again, I hope you learned something. I hope you're following along and I'm not getting too confusing with some of these things. I know when I'm talking tonal differences, that can get a little hairy in the subject matter. That's why it's good to hear it verbally and then see it visually, because it helps you understand. Also, if you want to, do this with me. Do it just like I am your instructor standing in front of you. You are here at my studio, and you are my student. So do that. Treat these videos in that manner. Come in, watch what I do. You know what you're seeing, and then get a piece and do it with me. Just like Bob Ross used to. It was great to sit and watch Bob Ross paint and then paint along with the man, because you could follow exactly what he's doing. You could see how he was working his brush. You could see how he's manipulating his paint. See how he's working his paint on his palette. It all lends to this. It's teaching and learning, and do it with me. And once you get these techniques down, you're definitely going to become a better model maker. So, for all of us here at Simple Groundwork and Diorama Techniques, I'm your host, Bill Grigg, and I will see you again. Thanks for joining me. Hope you learned something.